Let's sit nice and tall. And close the eyes. And just take these moments to connect with our innermost self. Or perhaps to connect with something that symbolizes that innermost self. Maybe placing the hands by the heart, feeling the heartbeat. And allowing that to be the symbol of something that lies beyond the physical, deep within, but also beyond. And perhaps focusing on the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. Allowing that to be the symbol of what lies deep within and also beyond. And focus with the eyes closed on the space behind the eyelids. And perhaps between the eyes, between the eyebrows, the seat that is known as the third eye center. And use that vastness there as a symbol of what lies deep within and what also lies beyond. The heart, the breath, and the universe. And together we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a nice breath in. Om. Bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledging yourself, your experience, your life, what lies within, and what is beyond. And draw the face to center, releasing the hands. Welcome. Another wisdom circle. So, what is within? What is the innermost self? How do we define it? How do we come to understand it? We can't see it, we can't smell it, we can't taste it, we can't touch it. So if we can't use our senses to identify it, like that's a chair. It's a velvety material, it's blue, it's stable, it's a funny L shape with 4 legs. We can't say that about the innermost self. We can't say it's a color or a texture or a taste. We can't use the senses to describe it. So how do we describe it then? How do we understand it? How do we come to know it? Initially, we use symbols. We say one thing kind of stands for another. And one of the things that we really associate the innermost self with is the heart. Not the physical heart, but the emotional heart. But emotions are senses. So while it's okay, absolutely, for us to acknowledge that there's some kind of a connection between the heart and the innermost self, it's important for us to know that if we become too tied up in the emotional aspect of the heart, the highs and the lows, the excitement and the crash, the grasping and the aversion, that's not the path to the innermost self. So we need to be mindful of that and remember that symbols are symbols only. They are not the truth. And then we need to work through the symbols and say, well, what does this really represent? The heart, the human heart, the emotional heart, so frail and so vulnerable to whatever is going on in a given day. We can look at the heart and say, when does the heart suffer? When is the heart happy, joyful, healing? The heart suffers when there's attachment. The heart suffers when there is disappointment. The heart of yourself suffers when there is a sense of lacking, a sense of violence in thoughts, words, or actions. The heart suffers, and therefore your whole being suffers, because the emotional heart, again, is emotional. It's based in the senses, and so it drives the sense-oriented body. In this moment, we're talking about into a state of suffering through disappointment, through anger, through violence. But there is another quality that the heart is known for, right? And that's the quality of love. And when we are looking at our human experience and doing our very best to come to know the truth of the innermost self and the truth of the universe, love truly is the path to that knowing. But what kind of love? Is it the typical human love that is full of possession and expectations? Or is it a little bit of a different kind of love in yoga that we call bhakti, devotion, selflessness, servitude for the better good, humility, honesty, non-violence, non-attachment. It's an all-encompassing love that, when it is practiced to its fullest extent, has no doubt, has no need. Bhakti is such a powerful essence, this devotion, this supra love, right? It is so strong that it would allow you to lay your life down for another with no fear, with no second thought. It would allow you to give everything that you have to alleviate the suffering of others with no regrets and with no fear. It allows you to see and appreciate the sunny days and the stormy days equally, because through the lens of bhakti, through the lens of divine love, we recognize that both the sunny day and the stormy day are equally divine. And therefore, we don't need to have a preference between the two. Certainly, we like going out and doing things on the sunny days. We like going kayaking and hiking and all these wonderful things. But aren't there also exquisitely wonderful things to do on stormy days? Like read a good book, chant, meditate, enjoy some warm food. There are equally wonderful things, no matter what is going on. And all those things have one source. The storm, the sun, the impulse to eat a warm, comforting meal or to take a walk in nature, they all have one source. And that source is divinity. I know in many traditions they divide things up into heaven and hell, to God and the devil. We don't have a devil. We don't have a devil. Have respect for the traditions that do. That's their faith system. But we don't have a devil. We don't have a hell per se. Suffering is hell. The ego is the demon. Because the ego is what drives suffering. And once you correct the ego, once you heal the ego of its attachments, then suffering is diminished. And in the great saints, it goes away completely. But for us, it's diminished. And a greater joy comes through. A greater ability within that joy to love more fully and with less conditionality. So we don't have hell and a devil. We have the ego and the man-made world. Dear Lord, help us please. When we say that there's a devil out there somewhere, we are diverting responsibility. Correct. Yeah. Say, no, that devil is stronger than I am. You can't say your ego is stronger than you are because your ego is what defines you. Right? It's what defines your person. It's how you see yourself and how you see the world. So when you're fighting with your ego, when you're battling your ego in the divine battle, what's happening is that you are redefining yourself according to the innermost self and less by the compulsion-driven sense of the mind, which is based on sensations. The ego is satisfied in this moment, not satisfied in the next moment. So that's complete responsibility of oneself. That's saying it's not that some external entity is making me do this. It's that I'm accepting that this is what I'm going to do and I'm doing it. Because somewhere in my mental state, I'm angry, lacking, disappointed, believing in something about myself that is driving this. Does that make sense? Yeah. Well, in Bhakti, those types of thoughts, those types of ego-driven actions, they are eventually rectified. Because Bhakti is powerful, far more powerful than the ego, but nowhere near as forceful as the ego. See, the ego grabs you and says, you lack, you're not worth, you're violent, you're angry, you're this. It pushes it on you. It forces it on you. The ego says, when it's unhealthy, you are this, so you believe this, and this is the way you behave because of this. Bhakti isn't like that. Love is not like that. Love does not force. Love empowers. Love is soft. Love is sweet. It can also be fierce, right? It can also be fierce because love comes up and says, if you want to know me, then you need to let go of those other things because you will not know me until you do. And that's not force, that's the truth. Love is the truth. It is the truth, not sugar-coated. Love says, you hate that person over there, then you can't know me. You think you love that person over there, and yet you ridicule them, and you push them, and you hurt them. You can't know me. Until you accept responsibility for your own self, you cannot know me. It's only in absolute responsibility through love, through generosity, through peace, that you can know me. And in order to be able to cultivate those types of qualities within the self, within the mind, and within the human heart, we need to let the ego lay at rest and stop accepting its instigation and influence. And then Bhakti just says, okay, you created a space, a niche. I'll fill it for you. It's fine, as long as you want me there. But just know that the two cannot coincide. So the moment that you give that ego food, you will forget me again. You will forget me. And you will come to depend upon a lesser form of love, the kind that hurts far too often. And so we sit there, and for a while we try really hard. We do our practice. We chant, we meditate, we do our yoga asana. We go work in the food kitchen. We say, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to see life a certain way. I'm gonna. Gonna is the future, right? Gonna is the future. So what the heck are you doing right now? Making promises about a future that may never come. What the heck good is that? So you got to back those words up and you have to start saying, I am, I am, I am. I am love. I am whole. I am. And ego, don't try telling me different because I know your game. I know your folly and I know your lies because I've suffered by them long enough. I will not accept them any longer because I am. And then Bhakti says, all right, now let's start blooming. Let's start blooming. Let the fragrance flow, the nectar. And then suddenly, I don't know, it's so amazing of an experience. It's like suddenly we end up seeing through different eyes. We end up seeing through spiritual eyes. See these eyes, these eyes, I take these off, I can't see anything. I'm so nearsighted. Like, if I didn't know that was you over there, I'd be like, I wonder who that is over there. And that goes for the three of you, too. I actually had somebody one time, they were walking on the other side of the street from me, and I could hear them, and I knew their voices sounded familiar. I was going this way, they were going that way. And as we passed each other, I did not know who they were. I couldn't tell. I was just like, I know that voice from somewhere. I heard one say to the other, I don't believe she didn't say hello to me. And I thought, I couldn't see you. So not those eyes, right? We see through the spiritual eyes. We see through the eyes that see and that recognize with reverence all that is. As Bhakti blossoms within us, we see the beauty in nature and we also see the devastation. But we don't look and say, good beauty, bad devastation. We don't say that because we understand that the moment that we put that preference into place, that we are shutting the door on this divine love and we're opening the door to the preferences of the ego. Instead, we look, and what we say, what we profess within ourselves is, thine will, not my will. May thine will be done, not my will. Sure, I'd like it to be a sunny day, but there's a reason why it's not a sunny day. There's a purpose to this. There's a purpose, and it is a divine purpose, whether we like it or not. And inevitably, I always get people who will say to that, and sometimes very vehemently, no, everything is not good. So I didn't say everything was good. I said everything is purposeful. Good is an ego word, right? When you're looking at it that way, good is a preferential word. It's like, this is good, yay, beauty. This is bad, boo, devastation. Yeah, there's creation, maintenance, and destruction. These are the three phases of all that is. One is not better than the other. All are necessary. All are purposeful. When we look at it and say, devastation is bad, 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 that's the ego saying, I don't like being uncomfortable. And it's like, but you make yourself uncomfortable. It says, yeah, but I don't want to be uncomfortable that way. Oh, so you can make yourself uncomfortable, and that's okay. But when natural things in life happen and you become uncomfortable, then all of a sudden it's bad. You know, it's just the folly of the ego. Does that make sense? Yeah, right? It's the folly of the ego. So we don't see through these human eyes. I mean, of course we do, but, you know, they're limited. So we see through our spiritual eyes, and those are the eyes that see all, and see all as divine, sacred. And it says, the life has come into being, so be it. The life is maintained for a period, so be it. The life, the physical life has relinquished, so be it. It is also this seeing clearly that allows us to accept more fully the physiological responses that we have to the creation, the maintenance, and the destruction. So when the tears flow as a matter of emotional release, we don't say, bad, bad, bad tears. I'm embarrassed by my tears. I shouldn't cry. I should be over it by now. BS. No. It says, you suffer, then you embrace your suffering. You cry, and you let the tears flow. You don't hold them, and you don't hold them hostage. You don't hold them to a story. Well, these tears are all I'm ever going to be. No, you say these tears are a necessity right now. So I'm going to let them flow. I'm going to let them be what they need to be. Because I know that by allowing this, there's going to be a spaciousness. There's going to be, and there is, space within me. That I can carry this and see it as less of a burden and more of just a life lived. Make sense? Yeah. We hear with our human ears, right? Sometimes we don't hear very well. I notice as I'm getting older, I'm like with my kids, what? What? What'd you say? Or we hear something and really they say, especially with young people, they only hear the first 3 words you say, right? Research has shown us this, that you're like children, especially teenagers probably, they only hear the first 3 words. So make those first 3 words count, because right after that you become Charlie Brown's mother. Wah, 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 wah. And they're off in their minds skiing or kayaking or something, So these human ears are so absolutely limited. But our spiritual ears, the ears that manifest through bhakti, the ability to listen, do you know what they hear? They hear everything. They hear everything. And they hear everything as being divine. They hear everything as being sacred. Even when someone insults you, even when someone calls you the worst name on the earth, when you are seeing through your spiritual eyes and hearing through your spiritual ears, through the lens of bhakti, you don't need to react to that because you know that their words and their actions are only a symptom of their suffering. And so your spiritual heart loves them because you know that you've suffered that way too. And that you've said things and done things that you really wish you hadn't. And so this is just evidence that suffering continues. But when we are focusing only on our human ears, which are tied very closely to our human ego, we say, what did you say to me? How dare you say that to me? Who do you think you are talking to me that way? Or you say, oh, they said it to me, I guess it must be true. And Bhakti says, you've just closed the door on me again. You can't have that and me. You can't. You have to choose. This is not force. This is truth. Force is the ego pushing itself on us all the time and us saying, believing it, Bhakti is the cure. Bhakti is the cure. And while we may have little moments of bhakti when the burden is less, right? The cure and the disease don't coexist. There are moments where one is more powerful than the other. But when the cure is worked, when the cure has been put into place and has worked, it means that the disease is gone, right? Bhakti is the cure. And the unhealthy ego is the disease. In bhakti, we have spiritual eyes, we have spiritual ears, we have a spiritual heart. These things are all based on love absolute, truth absolute, consciousness absolute, unity absolute. We have human eyes, human ears, and a human heart. And these things are based in preference. I don't want to suffer, or maybe I do. I want to control. I want to be the one who has the say. I don't want to be uncomfortable. And if I do it, if I am uncomfortable, better watch out because then I'm going to get mad and I'm going to make things my way. So that's the force. The bhakti is the empowerment. We have the sensation of feeling, touch. And when touch is practiced from the human egoic place, we have preferences, right? We have preferences. And it's an interesting conversation because I'm not talking here about trauma-inducing touch, right? So that's a whole different conversation. I'm talking about your average person who says, you ever see two kids? I'm touching you. I'm touching you. And the other kid's like, don't touch me. Don't touch. Mom, he's touching me. And mom's like, shut up, both of you. Right? That's human touch. Right? That's human touch. It's the preference to be touched or to not be touched. And in what way we should be touched. When we're talking about the spiritual aspect of touch, an interesting thing happens the further along your path you are. You really no longer crave human contact, like physical contact. You no longer crave that. You don't need someone to come up and give you a hug. You don't need someone to hold your hand. You don't need to have the opportunity to react. Stop touching me. You don't need that any longer. You don't crave it any longer. Because when we are embracing, knowing, living by, surrendering to the spiritual self, that human sensation of touch is not really necessary. Because we understand that the most profound touch is the touch of love. Is the way love touches. And love doesn't touch the physical necessarily, but more so the entirety, the energy, the consciousness. And so we see, that's like saying, you've got this beautiful organic salad with all these amazing healthy toppings on it, and then you've got cardboard. Guess which one is the salad, right? The human ego is the cardboard. There's no nutrition there, really. There's purpose to it, certainly, but there's very little nutrition there because we get so caught up in its brokenness. But the spiritual sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, that's like this beautiful, healthy, nutritious salad. It's like there's so much there for us. And we don't even have to try, We don't even have to try to consume it. Like you'd have to try to force yourself to eat that cardboard, right? You don't even have to try with the salad. The body says, yes, give me that. Let me have it. I know what to do with it. The body says the same thing about spiritual sight, sound, touch, love. It says, I know what to do with that. Just let me have it. I know what to do with it. Just put it there. And I'll teach you. I'll teach you how easy it is to simply integrate these things. And then in a moment, the ego comes back and says, yeah, but I like my cardboard with ketchup. And then Bhakti says, as long as you turn away from me, you can't have me. Sensory regulation is huge in yoga. Huge in yoga. It's one of the most important teachings initially, is the regulation of the senses. It's called pratyahara. The regulation of the senses so that we understand the difference between the ego-driven human senses and the potential of the spirit. Smell. Right now, when we use our human smell, we like something that smells and or we don't like it. Right? We're like, oh my God, what's that putrid smell? Oh, that's so horrible. And now it's staying in my nose. I can't stand it. No. It's the hugest insult, right? In spiritual terms, the sense of smell is nectar only. It's like, there's just nectar. It's just the fragrance of the lotus flower. It's just the sweetness. Now, How can that be true? Because the way you perceive things is the choice of your ego. It's not the way things actually are. Oh, there we go. That should be a t-shirt. The way we perceive things is the choice of the ego. It is not the way things actually are. There's always a choice. Always a choice of what to see, taste, smell, touch, feel. Always a choice. So when we choose to smell the foul things, it means that we're allowing, and we're reacting to that, I should say, right? And we're reacting to that because some smells are warnings. You know, you have to heed the warnings in the physical world. But when we react to it in a negative way, like, oh my God, that's just the ego saying, I need to exercise my influence. That smells horrible, isn't it? It's bad, bad, bad. Be drama. React to it. Tell them. Say, get that perfume away from me. Oh my God. Right? And Bhakti says, if you turn that way, you cannot know me. Because in the reaction lies the ego. Something irritates you, turn to something that doesn't. Bhakti doesn't irritate you. The perfect person at the mall comes up and says, sprays you with perfume. Don't hate on the person or hate on the smell. Turn to Bhakti. Turn to Bhakti. Turn to the inner devotion. Turn to the innermost self. Find a bathroom, wash it off, whatever. But don't have that reaction that brings violence to the forefront. Because certainly where there is violence, there can't be Bhakti. They don't coexist. It is not possible. So the path to the innermost self, and we could go on to all the human senses and have their spiritual correlate. I think we've done that, right? We kind of understand that there is a correlate to everything. One aspect is driven by the ego, and the other aspect is love. Not human love, because human love is driven by the ego. But it's this other love, which is something beyond love. It's pure joy. It's pure. Is it joy? Joy is probably ego too, right? So it's pure. It's pure fullness. It's wholeness, like Swami Dayananda said. It's wholeness, fullness, and the kind of fullness that is not driven by the ego, but which is truth itself, which is Bhakti itself. And you go to these kirtans, these Bhakti kirtans, and you see all these people. You know, they have the harmonium player, the kirtan wala, and they've got the chanters up there. And everybody, you know, who's listening, they're all dancing and they're crying and they're moving back and forth. And they're what's called ecstatic. And they don't care that they're crying, and they don't care that their knee hurts, and they don't care. It's those things. They're not turning to those things because they in the spiritual, in the bhakti heart of themselves, they know that these things, yeah, they need tending to, but they're not. They're a distraction mostly. Because I only need to tend to the knee when I need to tend to the knee. Otherwise, I don't need to tend to the knee. The knee will tend to itself. Isn't that the truth? Right? So how do I need to tend to the knee? I need to wear my brace. I need to do my exercises. I need to keep it, the surgical site clean. But other than that, I don't need to wallow there. It's a distraction. So what do? I go, Om Shri Durgaye Namaha, Om Shri Durgaye Namaha, Om Shri Durgaye Namaha. And I turn myself to the thing that is going to heal me, that is going to bring me, that is going to carry me through, that's going to allow me to open up my spiritual eyes, ears, nose, mouth, body, that's going to bring me to the place of a greater love, a more inclusive love, a fullness that doesn't cause my suffering. That doesn't cause suffering. And that doesn't contribute to your suffering either. Right? Because the human ego will contribute to your suffering for the sake of itself. Because that's where its forceful power comes from. It says, if I can make you suffer, then I'm superior. Therefore, I'm better. So it will hurt you for the sake of itself. Bhakti will never hurt you. Bhakti will never hurt you. Bhakti will only open you to the potential of yourself. So, I don't want to say when we first start on this path, because this is a lesson that is ongoing. This is a series of inquiries within the self that are continual. Not just one lifetime, but potentially many, many, many lifetimes as we remember and then forget and then remember and then forget and see how many ways this onion can be peeled. Millions and millions of ways. But it is a necessary inquiry. It's necessary. We must do this work. We must say, am I seeing through my human eyes right now as I'm glaring at that person? Or am I seeing through my spiritual eyes, which are extending compassion and saying, I don't need to be part of that, but I can look at that and I can feel, I can have empathy rather than apathy. I can witness and offer prayers from a distance, peace from a distance, Reiki from a distance. I don't have to throw my arms around the person if I'm not ready to and say, hey, man, I love you. You don't have to be like the dude. Remember him? Yeah. You can love without putting yourself into harm's way. You can. So to explore that and to inquire about the role of the sight, the role of hearing, the role of sound, the role of touching and feeling, the role of tasting. And then to say, so this is where I've been keeping myself in this little box of beliefs. Now, what lies beyond the box? So my grandson, he when he was younger, we would go for Indian food, and he'd be like, I don't want Indian food. I don't like Indian food. I don't like that food. I don't like that food. He had like most children, a couple of things he really liked, and that was pretty much life, right? Now, he's a teenager, and his tastes have changed. So now he takes great joy in all kinds of food. He's moved out of the idea that there's only burgers and fries and into the understanding that there's so much more waiting for him with the cuisine. How did he go from one to the other? He had to take a leap of faith and try. He had to try something along the way. He had to let down his guard and accept the possibility that there really is more. And that the kind of more that there is satiating. Now, with regard to him, it's satiating his hunger, but with regard to bhakti, it's satiating our heart, satiating our soul, satiating our spirit, satiating our being, so that we move away from the I'm gonna, and we become I am. I am. I am. And in case all that wasn't enough, I'm gonna exists on a linear timeline. Gonna is like 5 minutes from now, 5 days from now, 5 years from now, 5 lifetimes from now. I'm gonna. And you don't know if you're ever going to get there, because you're putting it there, which is the unknown. I am is not on a linear timeline. I am is in the truth of the moment. It's the eternal truth. I am. It's not the past and it's not the future. It's not the becoming or the was. It is. I am. I am whole. I am love. I am peace. And then someone comes up and punches you in the arm, and then you turn that way, and Bhakti says, You can't go that way and also know me. So you study that a little bit and you say, well, that person who came up and, gave me a little jolt in the arm, why did I turn that way? Let me gather myself together, my innermost strength and faith, and turn myself back around and say, Bhakti, you're the love that I want. You're the love that I need, and you are the love that I am. So let me hold no ill will for that person who bumped me in the arm. And instead, let me acknowledge that that is their suffering. Let me have compassion that that's what their suffering drives them to. And let me pray on some level of myself that they go beyond the belief that that's all they are. Somebody messaged me this morning an interesting thought. They said, I get so frustrated with the world. I'm paraphrasing greatly here, but I get so frustrated with the world. I look out and I see the condition of all these people and I say, oh, frustration, frustration, frustration. And then I get angry. It's like, don't blame them for your anger. They're suffering. So are you. Look in your suffering and ask yourself why you are so compelled to blame them for your suffering when there's so much more waiting for you. There's so much more. Certainly we can look out in the world and say there's work to be done. There's suffering out there that needs to be addressed. Let's dig wells and build houses and feed people and do all of the good work. Certainly do that. Because by far, that is going to benefit you, your heart, and your mind much, much more than looking out and saying, I hate, I hate, I hate, I hate, I hate. Let's have war, let's have this, let's have that, let's conflict with each other. By all means, in this human-made world, do the good deed. Do good, be good, like Swami Shraddhananda would say. Do good, be good, love all, harm none. Because it's healthier for you. It's better for you. And it will irritate your ego less than if you go out into the world being a vengeful, violent individual. But at some point, you've got to go past those two things even. You have to go past the place where you're making the choice, because the choice is saying that ego still has power over me. That ego still has power. It still makes me turn this way. And then I have to harness myself and pull myself back this way. So in that moment where you are looking out and through your human eyes seeing those differences, you are still under the woe of the ego. But once you let Bhakti flood you, fill you, satiate you, it's no longer a choice. It's obvious. It's so obvious. There is no choice. There is no choice. Because you would do nothing else. Because violence is the way of the ego. Love is the way of Bhakti. So the more you look to Bhakti, the more love will blossom inside of you, and you will know more and more profoundly what the purpose of your path is and what the purpose of every path is. And then you will be that. Be that now. I am. Not I'm gonna. Questions? Reflections?
It was awesome this morning. As you can see, I have many pages. So please make sure you post it, because I always go back and go over it again. But it was awesome this morning.
Absolutely. I will post it. And for those of you who do like to listen to them again, they're posted on our YouTube channel, and I usually share it on my Facebook page as well. So, yeah. Any questions or reflections on anything that we talked about so far?
I think we just live in a I'm gonna world.
Totally.
And it's just this nice reminder to be I am.
Yeah. And gonna is like, it's everything, right? It's like, well, tomorrow's going to be 90 degrees, I'm gonna. And it's like, what are you doing now? Yeah. Tomorrow's going to be nice out, so I'm gonna. Yeah, but what are you doing now? I'm gonna start that diet tomorrow. I'm gonna learn how to ride a horse tomorrow. And the more that we say that to ourselves, the more we're not doing anything right now. We're not living right now. We're not loving right now. It's okay to make plans for the future. It's part of our human compelling, is to plan for the unknown. But don't become so wrapped up in that planning that you forget to be alive. I know people, they get so wrapped up in the planning. It's like, next year is going to be my year. Didn't you hear that from a lot of people this past New Year's? It's like, goodbye 2021, hello 2022. And it's like, 2020 part 2? I think that was like a big joke that was going around, right? It's like, you were so busy cursing 2020 and 2021. You thought 2022 was going to be the answer. And she just brought her own, kind of chaos. That's all. So stop being so intending on the future when we don't know what that's going to bring. And instead, find your peace here and now. Find your happiness here and now. Find your purpose. Be your purpose. Don't even find it. Just be your purpose. Be your Dharma now. And every moment opens itself up. Everything you see, hear, taste, smell, touch. That's what I love about yoga. It's like, I can remember crystal clear the first classes that I ever went to. I'd go in all, and something would happen. The teacher didn't have to say anything. All I had to do was put myself into those postures, breathe, meditate. And I would walk out of that class, and that sky would be a different kind of blue. And those trees, a different kind of green. And you could see the three-dimensionality. You could see. You could hear. And it would just floor me every time. It was like, oh my gosh. It would literally floor me. I would just sit there and be like, wow. And I would try to explain that to people. And I'm like going back years now. And for years, it's like sometimes you just can't get the words for it. It's like you just have to experience it for yourself. And then the movie Phenomenon came out. Do y'all remember that movie with John Travolta?
Yeah.
Everybody see that movie Phenomenon? Oh, go watch it again. It's just such an amazing movie. There's a scene in that movie. Do you know the scene? He's sitting on his back porch. He's sitting back there and he's just looking. And his wife comes out. And he goes, sit. Do you see? Can you hear them? And he's got like this look on his face where I was like, oh my God, that's it. He was talking about the trees. And he was saying that he was in such a place in that moment. Now for him in the movie, it was because of a brain tumor, right? But hey, who knows? It opened him up to something where the Bhakti flowed in. And he said, I hear them. I can see them. Do you see them? Do you hear them? Like the trees were these amazing beings that he had overlooked his entire life because before he was living from the ego. And in that moment, he chose to be the Bhakti. Although that's not what they called it in the movie, but that's what we call it in yoga. So watch that movie if you're ever looking for something to do, and look at it from the perspective of spirituality. It truly, it is just such a beautiful lesson, a really dynamic offering. Yeah. All right. Questions? Reflections? We're good? A lot to think about. Yeah. Let's sit tall, close the eyes. Take a breath in and a breath out. Place your right hand on your heart, left hand on the belly. And maybe initially, connecting with the heartbeat or the breath. But then allow the soft energy of awareness to go beyond the heartbeat, beyond the breath, into the depths within. And maybe even beyond the within, to the throughout, to the universe that is everything. The consciousness. Know yourself to be that consciousness. Know yourself to be that. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. May all beings know themselves to be that. And together we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. Om. And bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledging all that is. And draw the face to center. Flutter the eyes open. Jai Mata Di, Hari Om. So good to see and gather with each of you today. Thank you all so much for coming out. They're still serving brunch. If you're hungry, enjoy. Please show them your gratitude. They work so hard in the kitchen. Moving forward, I will be teaching the classes on Sundays. And for a little while, the yin class will be in the Durga's garden rather than the auditorium until I can get up and down the stairs again. So I will see you next week, if not sooner. Very good. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Bye.